Hi everyone, my name is Gavin Virag. In this video, I will be presenting Chapter 18 of our book, Child as a Musician. This chapter is titled The Individual and Social World of Children's Musical Creativity. This chapter is authored by Pamela Bernard. Throughout this chapter, there will be several activities that we're going to do, so get your thinking caps on. We'll be discussing creativity throughout different cultures, theories that relate to children's musical creativity, and some of the factors that go into that. So let's get going. Alright everyone, so throughout this video I'd like you to think of several main questions. The first being, how do you define musical creativity? So I want you to think about a few things in terms of that. Not just what is creative to you, but what goes into you thinking about that as being creative. Is it a certain genre? Do they have to do something specific? Does it have to be technically difficult? Does it have to be fun? Does it have to be both of those, technically difficult and fun? Does it have to be catchy? So think of some things that help you define music as creative. Second, how do you help your students reach their creative potential in and out of your classroom? Is there a certain technique that you've employed in your classroom that has helped your students particularly to be creative? Is it through jazz? Is it a certain thing, a project that you've done in your ensembles or your general music classes or your theory classes? And also, in what ways have you had difficulty or success in the development of musical creativity with your students? Okay, so introducing creativity. What is creativity? Well, creativity is defined as the development of an original idea or ideas that make a socially recognized contribution. Creativity can be found in many different fields, including business, architecture, art, and especially music. It's found in almost every day of life, and anybody has the potential or the ability to be creative. Therefore, creativity is important in cultures because it helps us choose alternatives to either better the future or create a new path to some sort of outcome. Okay everyone, now is the time for you to think about your own personal process of creating. Whether it be in your teaching or in some aspect of personal performance, take a minute and please write down your steps to a creative outcome. If you feel like you do not have a creative process, hopefully after I discuss the creative process, you will actually find that you do. So please pause the video, take time to write this down, and think about your own personal creative process. Okay everyone, so hopefully you were able to write down your own personal creative process or ways that you actually create. So let's move on to what the process of creativity is, or an actual firm definition of the steps of creating. There are 4 steps. Step 1 is the preparation stage of creating. This stage begins with the investigating of the problem or an opportunity. This is done in many different ways, and this allows for the person to develop a clear understanding of what they are trying to achieve. In step 2, this is called the incubation part of the creative process. The incubation step is the period of reflective thought. Oftentimes this is done non-consciously or at a low level of thought, or an act of divergent thinking. For step 3, this is the illumination part of creativity. This can also be called the insight step. This is an experience of all of a sudden becoming aware of a unique idea, something that just automatically clicks and is associated with that light bulb stage of thinking, when the light bulb all of a sudden just clicks. Oftentimes this idea is very vague or rough and untested. And this stage oftentimes develops into a higher idea or more developed idea, which leads us to step 4, which is the final stage of creating and is known as the verification stage. This is where we take our light bulb ideas from the illumination stage and subject them to detailed logical evaluation and experimentation. This stage calls for furthering or repeating in the creative process to evolve into a finished product. Okay, as teachers, we need to understand characteristics of our students, and these are 4 characteristics of creative people. These include cognitive / practical intelligence. Though everyone has some form of creativity inside them, some may have higher potential for creative thinking or creative output. For the cognitive and practical intelligence, creative people are often able to evaluate their ideas and apply them and see if they are useful. And cognitive and practical intelligence allows them to do that. Persistence. Oftentimes creative people are very strongly motivated and oftentimes have high levels of confidence as well as optimism. They also have knowledge and experience, which is needed to acquire new knowledge. So this is often the case with many aspects of music. So whether it be arranging, composing, or improvising, you often have to do them to become great at them. So you have to continue to learn and experience to gain knowledge and experience. And finally, independent imagination. They need to be open to experiences, and oftentimes they have a low need for affiliation and strong values of self-direction. So they're self-starters, and they're ready to learn. Okay, now that we've actually defined creativity and the process of creativity, take a look back at the paper that you used to write down your own personal process of creating and see if it relates. Did you know that you went through those 4 steps? Did you know anything about the characteristics of your students in terms of the creative process? Did you know any of those characteristics of yourself? Please take a look back at your creative process and write down some similarities between the defined creative process and your very own personal creative process. So how does all this defining of creativity and the creative process relate to actual musical creativity? Well, the concept of musical creativity does not possess the same meaning from culture to culture, so it's not defined completely by just the things that we talked about in the previously. So it's different everywhere. Therefore, several theories have arisen. 3 of the big ones are Webster, Csikszentmihalyi, and Elliot. Before we go on to discuss those, I posted a video in the previous section that is by the president of the Berklee School of Music that talks about some of the things in terms of culture and musical development in a child and some of the stages that they go through. So please take a look at that. Okay, before I discuss the theory of Webster and his musical creativity theory, please reflect on what the president of the Berkeley School of Music said and how it correlates with these next several theories. So, Webster characterizes the base of creativity in music as a set of enabling conditions. These enabling conditions include motivation, divergent and convergent thinking, environment, and the personality of the person. If you don't know what divergent thinking or convergent thinking is, divergent thinking is leading to many different solutions, many different outcomes, and convergent thinking is a way of thinking to one single solution. Okay. In terms of enabling skills, these include musical aptitudes, craftsmanship, conceptual understanding, and aesthetic sensitivity. These all add up to the creative product. And when the student is put in this environment and is given the skills that they need, they become a lot better equipped for more creative music, creative output, and just in terms of music, a more creative thought process. The next thing that's about to be shown, the next video that's about to be shown, is a trailer from the documentary The Whole Gritty City. It's a perfect example of Webster's theory. It shows students young, as old as 7 or 8, all the way into high school. These students are from New Orleans, and they're all in some sort of band. New Orleans is often known as the Jazz City, Blues City, and those students, those children are bred and born into that environment. So they have that environment and are given the skills to that kind of musical creativity. And it's, again, a perfect example of Webster's theory of musical creativity. The next theory that we are going to discuss is by Mike Csikszentmihalyi. He's often known for his theory of flow, but he also has this theory of musical creativity, which is defined by people's judgments or a person's judgments. The judgments are defined as and would depend on the relationships that are held between certain people. There's three different, areas or people involved in this theory. The first one being the domain. The domain is the musical opportunities or performances and constraints. Also, the next is the person or the child or children creators. And finally, the field. The field are the teachers, researchers, and those who have a high kind of judgment or no quality when they see it of the domain. This is important because as music educators, we're often in the role of assessing and judging the creativity of children's musical endeavors. So therefore, as teachers, we are the field. The third theory that we are going to discuss is Elliot. Elliots Theory views the role of societal judgments in music education as tangible products or achievements that people deem valuable, useful, or exceptional in some sort of regard. So, a child's creative achievement in music has its roots in specific communities of practitioners who share a specific tradition of musical thinking. So, this theory actually creates a divide between a children's musical creativity and adults' musical creativity. So, what may be considered an achievement in a child's world or a extremely creative process in a child's world may not be considered that in an adult world. In the next two videos, we have really good examples of that. The first being a 3-year-old violinist who is actually performing with a world-renowned symphony in Berlin. And though he's very, very talented for 3 years old, it's not the world's best violin playing. So yes, as a 3-year-old, it's an amazing achievement, but all in all, if you compare it to the entire scope of adult and child world, the playing is not fantastic. But again, it's an amazing achievement because he's a 3-year-old. The next one is of a 6-year-old prodigy named Emily Beer, and she's actually a pianist and a composer, and she's 6 years old. So take a look at those videos and just know that they're two different worlds according to Elliot. One being the achievement in the adult world, the other being the achievement in the children's world. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed those clips of those children. Uh, Both of them were absolutely amazing in both their skills. One being extremely fun to watch, a 3-year-old performing with an orchestra, and the other one just being an amazing talent. So let's actually, I want to pose a question to you. Say you were having a newborn. What is the most important thing that you can provide to this newborn? I want you to write down some lists of things that are absolutely necessary for you as the parent to provide to this newborn. Okay, so what did you write down? I'm sure there's several things that are common amongst everyone's list, those including food, love, shelter, warmth, education. But one thing that you should think about is food. What kind of food? What kind of shelter? What should we teach them? This isn't always the same in each part of the world. And the key ingredient to this is culture. When you understand the culture, it gives you the scripts to development. It gives you the scripts of what to do and how to get to your achievement and get to your goal. And that includes, with creativity. So again, the key ingredient is culture. So if culture is the key ingredient to understanding our scripts to development, as educators, what should we do? Well, as music teachers, we need to understand musical creativity in different contexts. These contexts being the individual world of the child, the world where cultural dynamics interact within the social worlds of the child. Children construct and enact vehicles for musical creativity. The way they do this is through several different ways, including play explorations, music in nursery schools, what they do out on the playground, innovative musical style practices, and communities of practice, what they're doing socially. Musical creativity often interweaves with individual and social factors within these specific cultural conventions. So again, as music educators, we need to be sensitive to what is going on in the child's world. So, psychologists and educators figured if we need to know what's going on in the child's world, we need to develop some models. There's developmental milestones in children's creativity, and there's several different models that focus on different aspects of this. So the models that I have listed here focus on creativity as the product of the single individual. Development is a process within the individual. So our first model, Gardner, uses artistic development, Ross, aesthetic development, Swanick and Tillman, musical development, and Hargreaves and Galton, listening and generative skills in different art forms. So these four developmental milestones, really give educators and psychologists a good outline of where students should be and what should be happening during those times of musical creativity. So what was found in these models was four specific things. So they highlight the importance of four things: the development of sensory motor, roots, and action schemes, the role of symbolic play in early childhood, individual cognitive and socio-culturally shared influences in the acquisition and development of creativity, and a child's awareness of their culture as representations of their world. So there's a lot coming at you right now. For those of you who haven't read this chapter, there's a lot of information. So let's break this down step by step. The first one being early childhood. Children in the extremely very young ages explore music through spontaneous song. Oftentimes, they won't even know words yet, and they're already breaking out into dance and song. They're playing, they're improvising, often using instruments, and this is a process of enculturation. That was hard to say. Enculturation. So enculturation is actually the delving into one's culture. They're learning our culture, and they're actually becoming part of culture. In middle childhood, which is ages between 5 and 7 years old, the creativity widens with more contact with others, such as teachers and peers, and they have more immersion into their culture. So oftentimes, they start to become more socially interactive, and they also are now put into schools where they actually see how they're forced to interact with others and see how the culture is, and they're immersed into the culture. So late childhood, ages 8 to 12, these children experience more interculturation as well as more social interaction. They're used to interacting with kids and people their own age, as well as teachers. And they often begin to see themselves not as individuals but as participants in the culture, and they begin to interact more with each other with that kind of mindset. Okay, as students begin to break away from their childhood and move into their adolescent, teenage, and young adulthood and adulthood years, they become influenced by cultures and become part of different cultures. There's 4 big ones that they're a part of. The first one being a superculture. This is a big culture, or for example, children culture. For me, my children culture was like Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers. They're also influenced by subculture, which is their age, race, or gender, oftentimes with different things that are associated with those. A microculture, which is the way things that are done in their classroom, whether it's their homeroom teacher, their first grade teacher, their high school teacher, how things are done there. Their community, oftentimes from different communities, things are done differently. Or maybe in terms of music education, their ensemble, whether it's orchestra band, choir, jazz band, different things like that. So they're influenced by the way things are done in there. Also, interculture. An example of that is popular culture today. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground throughout this video, and as teachers, there's a lot that we need to know. So, one technique for us to learn these things and to really be able to be sensitive to these things is asking 4 words. Now, how, what, why, and whom. Asking how, what, why, and whom can answer many questions on where creativity comes from. As we've seen in our previous previous question about our children, what would you provide to your child if it was a newborn, we see that oftentimes it can be very, very different, and culture gives us those subscripts. So we find that children are often influenced by a number of social interactions through individuals and cultures. So asking how are they influenced? Where are they influenced? What are they influenced by? Why are they influenced by this? And who is influencing them can really help us delve into these worlds of our students and help us see where their creativity is coming from, maybe bring creativity out of them, or achieving another goal, positive outcome with them. So therefore, children construct musical creativity through a number of sources. They're influenced by so many different things, and again, as music educators, we need to know these things, and we need to find out why, and really ask now, what, why, or whom. Okay, now that our discussion here is coming to a close, has your idea of creativity changed? Has your personal process of creating changed? And how will it affect your teaching?